Welcome to the Christian Business Concepts with your host, Harold Milby. Christian Business Concepts is dedicated to guiding companies and business owners in becoming effective, efficient, and successful through God's Word and godly principles. Now, here's your host, Harold Milby.
Thanks for that introduction, Kelly, and thanks everyone for downloading this week's Christian Business Concept podcast, and especially for allowing me to be a part of your life today. You know, I'm truly humbled by the fact that there are so many people from around the world that really have become a part of the CBC family, and I just want to say thank you to everyone who downloads this podcast, and of course for those of you who share this with other people, and I hope you do. Today we're going to have a very special guest on our podcast, Johnny Nunn, who is the president of Integrity Meter Solutions. Welcome, Johnny. Glad to have you on today's podcast.
Hello, Harold, and thank you for having me on your podcast. I'm really excited to be here, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Well, we're glad to have you. This is our first time we've ever done a guest today, so this kind of a new thing for us and something exciting to have guest people on. So thanks for being that first guy and that first guinea pig.
Not a problem at all. I'm happy to be your first guinea pig.
Johnny, why don't we start off with you telling our podcast audience a little bit about your company?
Sure. My company name is Integrity Meter Solutions. We started the company in January of 2020, and what we do is provide water, electric, and gas smart meters all across the country. We basically in multifamily living, commercial properties, and mobile home parks.
So it's a technological a type business where you're advancing through the use of technology the types of meter reading and that kind of thing. So it makes it easier. You don't have the guy crawling around reading meters all the time. It's more electronic.
That's correct. They basically just remote it on a computer and I'm able to pull that data down. And right now we've actually in our first 3 years we've grown into 26 states so far. And so we're primarily focused in Florida in the southeast region is kind of where our primary focus is, but we've kind of journeyed all over the place so far.
Sure. Starting regionally and then just expanding out.
Correct.
That's great. Let me ask you this question, and this is always an important question to me when I talk to people, is what led you to start your company? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I've been in my industry for 25 years, and the last company I worked for, I'd worked there for 6 years, and I was the service manager, and we were servicing about 30 different states, so you can imagine the large velocity of that. So when I would go to the upper management, the owners, and to explain to them what our issues were and trying to, navigate through that, and they just really fell on deaf ears. And as the problems began getting bigger, my frustration began getting bigger, and I had nowhere to turn. And it wasn't a Christian-owned company, I might add, so I didn't have that support there. And that was what motivated me to say, hey, I can do this on my own.
Yeah. So, some of the companies that we see and hear from today are people who are very, similar to your situation, to where that they were involved in a company and they felt like they could do a better job, or they felt like there were certain issues that were kind of core values that they had that the company didn't have, and so they didn't feel good about that. And so there's a lot of big companies out there that started exactly how you've started, where that you've seen that you think you could do a better job, you could build a better mousetrap. It's something that people say a lot, and so you were able to take that and move forward. Did you feel or sense any drawing of the Lord to begin the business in the beginning?
Harold, I'll be honest with you. When I started my company, I really wasn't living my life for God. Through some personal life issues that I'd gone through, I'd allowed that to interfere with my relationship with Him. It was about 1.5 years into my business, I restored my relationship with God, and now I'm trying to restructure and run my company as a Christian-owned and Christian-ran business. But with that being said, looking back, I feel that God was involved in all of it. Let me explain. I believe God gives us talents and abilities. And when I started my company, I used those talents and abilities that He gave me to start it. I don't think we have to go to God and ask Him, hey, God, can I use my talent today? In fact, I think it's probably the opposite of that. It's implied. God gave you those talents, and He expects you to use them. With the difference between the two would have been that if I was living for God, I would have been mindful of God and prayer and making those decisions and not depending on myself.
Johnny, I think back, when I was pastoring many years ago, and I think about how that we used to try to help people find their gifts, to understand their gifts, find out what their gifts were so that they could figure out what God really wanted them to do in life. And I used to always use this analogy of if you had amnesia and you didn't know what your profession was and you didn't know what you were supposed to do, but you opened the trunk of your car and you found hammers and saws and drills and levels and squares, I think you could take and look at those tools and say, oh, I must be a carpenter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think in the spiritual realm, we kind of have the same thing. If we can get in tune with what our gifts are and what our talents are and our abilities are, we can really begin to get an idea of the direction that God has for our life. And I think that there are so many people in the world today that don't know that don't have an idea of this is, this is, to quote the Mandalorian, this is the way.
This is the way.
And they don't know what that way is. And so for people like you who are in business, who are able to get that able to find that, to me, I think is one of the most exciting things that I see in the Christian business realm. And so I'll kind of follow that up by asking you this question. Do you feel like there's a greater purpose to your business besides the business itself?
In the past 12 to 18 months, I've had a tug on my heart to get involved in our homeless ministry and our men's ministry at our church. Those two specifically is what I feel God has been sharing with me. I definitely feel that my company is growing because of God. When I pray, I really pray specifics for my company, and that I pray that He leads me to where He wants me to go, whether that be in a podcast here with you today, whether it be our men's ministry or homeless ministry. He shows me where I can financially be supportive and physically where I can get involved.
So you're taking the Lord's direction, and the business is really more, in your mind, it seems like is as much of a ministry as an actual ministry like a church or something like that. You see your business as a ministry.
I didn't at first, but as I've put God back in my life, that's exactly how I see it now.
So, you've started this business, and in the beginning and even now, I'm sure there are times that are tough, and you're on this journey. Can you tell us a little bit on the business side, a little bit about the toughest challenges maybe that you've had? What are some of those tough challenges, and how have you tried to overcome those?
For me, the toughest part for sure was leaving my 9-to-5 job, the security that I had in that, and putting myself out there. When I started my business, I had very little cash. I was working out of my garage. And the fear I had, it was very, very real in my mind every day. How am I going to provide for my family? I had a list a mile long in the back of my mind of what ifs. What if this happened? What if that happened? But I also knew that I was a go-getter. I'm the kind of person that goes out and makes things happen. And I was just so excited not to be running somebody else's business that the desire that I had to be successful far outweighed the fear I had of failing.
Well, I think that what's important too, and I'll just make a statement by asking a question, but do you feel that your relationship with the Lord has helped you through the tough times through this?
God has definitely helped me through this whole journey, even when I didn't know He was. And let me give you a little story to illustrate that. Last year, when I was traveling to our largest trade show, I think it was out in San Diego, if I remember correctly, I met with this guy that I never met before. And come to find out, this guy ran the service department for the largest building company in the country. And we talked about what my company did, what we could possibly do for them, where their struggles were, and where I might fit in. And shortly after the conversation started, he kind of just stopped in mid-sentence and says, I don't know how to say this to you, but I can tell you're a man of faith. The way you present yourself, your body language. And of course, I just kind of smiled back and said, yeah, I try to live a godly life. And that to me, during that moment, that was a way for God to confirm to me that He hears my prayers. One of the prayers that I pray on a daily basis, that God, let people see you through me, not let them see me. And I've had this happen to me several times in my lifetime where somebody has made a comment like that to me. And I think that's just a way God talks to me and letting me know that I'm in the right place or I'm doing the right thing. Sometimes I don't always hear God's voice like I want to be, like an audible voice telling me, hey, this is what you should do. And sometimes it's more of a feeling. And when somebody comes out of nowhere and tells you things like that, that just kind of confirms with me that God is listening, God is watching, and He is part of our lives, even sometimes when we don't feel like He is.
You know, I have always been a teacher of vision and trying to teach people the power of vision and understanding they need to have a vision. And, you know, I've had a lot of people tell me they have a vision, but then when I ask them what their vision is, they can't articulate it. And that always tells me they may have it in their head, but they haven't really honed in on it. Because once you really have a vision, you can articulate it. And so my question is, during some of these tough times that you've dealt with, has the vision that God's given you for you and your business helped you get through those tough times?
Yeah, for sure. And there's been many of those things that I weren't prepared for, I guess is the word I'm using. From financial situations to employees, vendors, customers. I would say to expect the unexpected would be the best advice I'd give you. Mm-hmm. I've learned being an employee versus owning a company are very far different things. They're very opposite of each other, honestly.
Yeah. And
so I had to learn that. When I grew into business, I never owned a business before. I really didn't know much about what that even was going to look like. Mm-hmm. I just stepped out in faith and did it. And as things came, I just had to deal with them as they came and pray about them and pray I make the right decisions with those. And so far, I feel like we've done a pretty good job of that.
Good. What are some of the challenges, I guess I would ask, that a Christian business owner or a leader, could face today? And what would you say to encourage those Christian leaders that are there right now that are listening to this podcast?
When I look around the world today, it looks very different than it did 20 years ago. In fact, it looks very different than it did 5 years ago. With the pandemic, technology, dealing with our government shutting things down during the pandemic, that changed the dynamics in how I approach business. So for me, putting God in my business was the most important thing I probably could do. I pray God leads me and my company in the direction that He wants. So for me, I think getting connected with local Christian business leaders would be a good start. Getting connected at a local church to keep your personal growth going, and look for a network of people, of like-minded people, to surround yourself with to help support one another. Praying is going to be a big component, and I really believe we're getting in a time and era where Christian businesses are going to have to stand up and going to have to lead. I look around at the leaders that we have today and what they're doing, how they're directing us, where they're taking us, and it's just not going the direction in which we know God wants us to go. So we're going to have to stand up. We're going to have to be measured in what we do and really stand out and start taking the lead and showing people what that looks like.
Well, that kind of leads me to the next question, Johnny, and that is, can you tell us your thoughts about the importance of Christian business in our world today and where that you think it might go? And I want to remind you and our audience, I've shared this before on another podcast about how there was a great revival that started in the 1930s, and it started in New York City on Wall Street. With a business owner, or he wasn't even a business owner. He had something to do with the stock market, and so he decided to start a prayer meeting on Wall Street, and so it started. And it had 12 people that came the first week, and he did it once a week. And the next week there was about 50 people that came, and then the next week there was over 200 that came, and then it just kind of exploded from there. And before long, there were several thousand people coming, and then that spread throughout the country. And there was really a great move of God that took place over a period of years through that, and it really opened up a lot of people's eyes about, business owners and business people can actually be Christian people and live and run their business through Christian concepts. And so, with that in mind, how do you see the importance of Christian business and the future of the body of Christ, and how those two can interact with each other?
I believe we are coming to a time where Christian businesses and Christian people are going to have to step up and lead. I mean, I don't see a way around it. That's the only way we're going to take back what's been taken from God. It will take godly men and women that are principled, that are measured, and they're praying to lead. That's what it's going to take from my perspective. You look all around us, Harold, and you see the evil in the world. You see the wickedness, selfishness. I mean, there's a long list of ungodly things we can point at right now that we see that's around us. And I think it's more important today than ever that Christian business owners start being examples to their local communities and getting involved in the grassroots where they can actually make a difference.
Yeah, and you see the difference, and I talk about this quite a lot in our podcast, but the difference between being a Christian-owned company and a Christian-run company.
Yeah.
You see those differences.
I do.
Yeah.
You can call yourself a Christian-owned business, and that's great, but if you're not applying those principles on how you run your company, then you're just a Christian-owned business.
Yeah.
I want to be a Christian-ran business. I want God to be the focus and center point of that.
Yeah.
And let Him run with this.
Yeah. You know, I was at a meeting last week, and it was kind of interesting because we had a guest speaker that came in, and he was a guy in his 30s and late 30s, and he had started a business 5 years ago that has grown from nothing to, I think last year he did $175 million in sales, and he's selling cups on the internet. And he competes with Yeti and those type of people. They're insulated mugs and cups. And he came in and he spoke for 2 hours, and it felt like it had been 15 minutes. I mean, he was so engaging. But the one thing I recognized was that he said a lot of things that would lead me to believe that he was born again. And I had a chance to ask him afterwards, and I asked him, I said, "Are you a Christian?" He said, "Yes, I am." And this guy has this business, and he gives all of the profits away. All of his profits he gives away. Now he pays himself a salary, he pays his employees and that. But the profits of the business, that which he doesn't use to increase the business, obviously, to invest in the business, but the actual profits he literally gives away. And as we move forward, I think in today's world with Christian business, I think it's going to be important that Christian business become a bigger part of the Christian realm, as you've said. It's so important because of where our world's at today. So, let's talk a little bit about, as a Christian, how some of those principles you utilize when you're leading your business. Is there anything you can share about that?
For me, there's a few things I really try to stay toward or try to lean toward. And first of those honesty, respect, and openness. So for me, I think having a good character is one of the most important things we should thrive for. And being open to God's Spirit, being open to people, being open to different opinions. I'm not here to condemn. I'm here to show compassion, understanding, and through God's love and grace. And if we just stay focused on the simple part of that, not get too, out there and on that, just stick to the basics. That's kind of what I'm doing, just trying to teach the basics to not only my employees and the people around me, but just in general, as I practice business, I just try to stick to the basics.
You mentioned honesty and integrity, and I know for a lot of people, those are people's core values. But what can you tell us about your core values, and what values that you have are completely non-negotiable?
When we started the company, one of the things I realized in our industry that was lacking, or at least in my experience, was there was no honesty out there. There was no integrity in the businesses that I was working with. So I wanted to open something that amplified integrity, honesty, being transparent with our customers on what we're doing. And because of doing that, that's made all the difference in the world with our customers and the experiences that we've had so far with them.
Yeah. So have you had experiences since you've done that with businesses saying, "Hey, wow, we've never experienced something like this. This has been a really good experience for us"?
It's funny you say that. At almost every incident of every new customer I have, that's the reaction that we get. We've never had a subcontractor that worked the way you do. We've never had a subcontractor that performed the way you perform. So I've had confirmation for that many times over from different vendors and customers so far.
Oh, that's powerful. That's really powerful. Obviously, you have employees. So how are you implementing Christian principles in order to have a positive impact on your employees?
For me, it's been trying to show them a godly example, be a godly example to them. Try to show them I'm willing to go the extra mile when I need to. I call these guys pretty regularly on the phone and talk to them. They're traveling all across the country, sacrificing their time with their families. And I realize how important that they are to our success here at our company. So I know there's times they call in and they're frustrated because the job site isn't going the way they want it to go. So I just try to be positive with them. I try to uplift them, let them know how much they mean to me and how much they mean to the company. And that goes a long way with them.
Do you feel, when you look at employees, and I know a lot of employers put employees on one side of the ledger or the other, but when you look at employees, do you see them as liabilities from that financial standpoint, or do you see them as an asset?
Well, not all employees are created equal, but I look at all my employees as assets. The ones that want to grow, the ones that lean in and look at your leadership and want to run with your vision, when you find those types of employees, those are the ones you want to help and grow. These are the ones that can grow into leaders, the ones that will make a difference in your company because they care. I want to lead all my employees, but some are like the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yep. So, when you say that, do you feel like that you should also have an impact on your customers and vendors as a Christian business? Tell us a little bit about how that looks.
Harold, this is one of those places in our business that I really need to work on. We haven't really developed that process or what that looks like in our company just yet. I definitely want to make sure that we're an example to our vendors and customers out there, that they see that we are a Christian company, that Christ runs through what we do. I just don't know exactly how that looks just yet and how to present that in that element. So we're working on that right now, and hopefully God will give us the direction we need to do that.
Yeah, I think that a lot of businesses struggle with that. I don't think you're the only one. I think it has to be done in a purposeful manner. I don't think it'll just naturally happen. I think we have to kind of look at that kind of as a kind of the early church in the book of Acts and how that they went out. And I don't believe the church would have ever left Jerusalem if it hadn't have had persecution. And I think God allowed the persecution in order to really push them and get them out of the nest, so to speak, kind of kick them out of the nest, and to take the message worldwide. And I think we're going to have to be that way too. I hope we don't have to be persecuted to do it, but I hope that we kind of, as Christian businesses, we get out there and say, hey, we're a Christian business and we believe in these things. These are non-negotiable things. These are things that are important to us, and we just kind of want you to know about that. And then live what we tell them, and live what we say, live what our message and our vision is, so that they see we're not just saying words, but we actually live by it. Let me kind of pivot just a little bit and ask you. Do you have a personal growth plan that you've implemented in your life? And if you do, why you think, kind of tell us why you think that's so important.
Harold, I do have a growth plan, and I find it necessary if you're in your personal life and in your business life to have one. And the reason that is because what it does is helps you set personal goals and business goals. It also helps you meet those personal and business goals. Also, it helps me deal with the challenges that come my way. And one of the biggest things that I think we can do, and what it helps me do, is lead from the front. I think that's one of the more important things that we overlook sometimes.
Yeah, so having that personal growth plan is really important, and I believe that. Some people struggle with having a personal growth plan. They don't even know where to start. Can you maybe give them some ideas? Tell us a little bit about your specifics in your growth plan and the different media or maybe platforms that you've incorporated into it.
Yeah, sure. I've used personal coaches. I've watched all types of videos. I've read books. One of the best things I've done is actually talk to other successful business owners. I talk to them about certain scenarios and different things I may go through, and they've been giving me really good feedback on things they've dealt with in their own personal businesses. Believe it or not, Harold, your podcast has been a great tool and asset for me personally. The whole stepping stones analogy, that really put things in perspective. And when living for God, it isn't always going to be easy. But the stepping stones we take will help us get to the end goal and ultimately what God has for us.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that too. Thanks for plugging the podcast.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this. Do you have a college degree?
I do not have a college degree.
Tell us a little bit about how you've been able to overcome that. You know, there's a lot of talk about how that everybody needs to go to college, and I'm not knocking college. I think it's a great way to get ahead in life. But I also believe that college isn't for everybody. I do think that we need plumbers and we need electricians and we need other tradespeople. Without them, I think we just progress stops. I think you have to have them. But tell us a little bit about, being a business owner and how you've been able to overcome that aspect.
Harold, the model that was shown to me growing up was you went to college, you got your degree, you found a good job out of college, you got a pension, you retired, and everything would be grand. And that model may have worked for our grandparents or even our parents, but I saw very early that model would not work for me. I had some friends that went to college, got their degree, come out of college to either find they didn't have a job they wanted to do in the field they went to college for, or the job they did have was paying very little for all the education and money they put into it. So very early on, I realized college wasn't for me, and I didn't need a degree in order to be successful.
As a business leader, do you feel like you have that you have to have all the answers?
I would love to say yes, I have all the answers, Harold, but the answer is I really don't have all the answers. But what I have done is use the talents and the abilities that God has blessed me with to help me find the answers to anything I've ran across.
Well, I think that's awesome, Johnny. I just want to say how much I appreciate you being on today's podcast. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sharing with our podcast listeners about your journey in your business. And sometime I'd like to have you back and we can talk in a little bit more detail about some things. But thanks again for being on today's podcast.
Absolutely, Harold, and thank you for having me today. I did want to share with you real quick that I wanted to thank you for creating Christian Business Concepts. Your podcast has been impactful. It's been insightful for me personally and for my business. And I want you to know that it's impacting lives. It's definitely impacted mine.
Well, thank you very much. And, thank you everyone for listening to today's podcast and, just continuing to grow as a Christian, but grow as a Christian business leader. We need you out there. We need you to be a part of our society and use those Christian concepts and abilities to not only grow your business, but to grow your customers and grow people that work for you and around you. And so I thank you for that. Be sure to download next week's podcast as well and search through the archives of our podcast. You'll find a lot of different topics and subjects on there for your help. And as we go today, I want you to remember this, as always, that Jesus is Lord and He wants you blessed.
Thank you for tuning into this week's Christian Business Concepts podcast. Go to ChristianBusinessConcepts.com for more information and resources. Be sure to check out other podcasts that will help you take your business and your personal life to a whole new level of success.